The stories that I tell, the introduction and conclusions I create for the stories with my guests are all written, read, edited, produced, and executed by me, your host, Rula. I like to do this in writing because after I listen to the episode with my guests, I can describe how I relate to their story, go back into my memories, and give them their value only in writing. I don't do this spontaneous because the Life Affairs podcast, Echte Levensverhalen, is more of storytelling rather than one-on-one interview. That's why you will hear me reading my stories, reading my introductions, but trust me, I put so much effort, love, thoughtful feelings in each word I share with you. I don't want to miss out on the things I share with you. And when I write them, I have them there in the best possible way to bring it in this podcast. If you hear a sound in the background, that's my cat, because this recording is spontaneous and not previously written. Welcome to the Life Affairs podcast. This is a place where we share life experiences and the many lessons learned by just living. Join me to immerse ourselves and take a closer look at the stories that shaped and defined us. Just remember, there's no judgment and a lot of understanding on today's episode of the Life Affairs podcast. I'm in the late 80s when I have my first encounter with breathwork. I'm a totally stressed teenager, feeling really upset because of some drama at home. I'm breathing quickly and heavily. Out of nowhere, I end up with cramps in my hands. I'm immediately in panic mode. Luckily, I happened to be visiting a good friend of mine, and her mom, bless her heart, sees my distress and runs to rescue me, handing me a paper bag. She asks me to deliberately breathe in the bag and count every breath I make while keeping my eyes on the movement of the bag. Inflate and deflate. It feels pretty weird, but desperate times require desperate measures. I take a leap of faith and go for it. Within just few minutes, my hands relax and a wave of calm washes over my entire body. I am back to my normal self. Well, as normal as a teenager can be. This experience stayed with me because I was simply fascinated by this seemingly ordinary paper bag that worked wonders. Throughout the years, there have been a handful of instances where I truly understood and appreciated the breathwork. One of those unforgettable moments is the roller coaster ride of giving childbirth. The thought of pushing a human being out of my body scared the living daylights out of me. I clung to every word and instruction that came through the lips of the midwife and the nurses. Breathwork became my lifeline during childbirth in this intensive experience. Fast forward to more recent times, life decides to throw some curveballs my way, resulting in a barrage of panic attacks. I have no clue what a panic attack feels like until it hits me like a bucket full of ice water. It is the culmination of years of stress because of an unresolved, stubborn issue that makes me feel trapped, unable to see any light at the end of the tunnel. This resulted in a panic-inducing episodes. I am desperate for relief, so I embark on a quest to find a way to manage and prevent these attacks. This is where I dive into breathing exercises. Like crazy, I'm searching through YouTube for every tutorial I could get my hands on. I start to apply those exercises to my daily routine as a weapon against panic attacks. And yes, they have helped me. They have this ability to make pain fear, and all sorts of discomfort, physical and mental, to disappear. But it wasn't easy. It took time and practice to figure out what worked for me. But step by step, breath by breath, I learned to ride out the storm and find my way to calmer waters. Not every day, though. I try to work hard to intentionally remember how much they help me and use them immediately when I need them. Today, before I hit the record button, Kim Pudding, my special guest, guides me on a breathwork session known as the box breathing technique. Kim is an absolute pro when it comes to the benefits of breathwork and cold exposure, including this famous ice bath experience. Today, she is here on the show to share her remarkable journey, starting from overcoming excessive drug and alcohol use, battling a serious food addiction, and struggling with a less than ideal relationship with her body. Don't expect heavy dramatic conversation here. Thanks to Kim's warm energy, our discussion is far from that. It's quite the opposite. It turns out to be delightful, informative, and somewhat psychedelic experience. Throughout the episode, there will be moments where I want to kick back, put my feet up, and simply soak in the story. As we sit in my studio with a strong cup of Italian coffee, we decide to skip the cookie. They're not Kim's thing. Coffee, on the other hand, is her true love. And you know what else she's passionate about? Having a transcendent session of plant medicine amidst the stunning dunes of the beautiful north of Holland. That's where our conversation begins, as I ask Kim to enlighten me about the wonders of plant medicine.
Plant medicine, yeah, which I used to consider to be drugs. I was in this field of spirituality where a lot of people were doing plant medicine. I thought, yeah, it's just an excuse to do drugs, because I've known the drug scenes from when I was younger. But then suddenly I get a different insight. Plant medicine is really something different than what I associated to drugs. It even has come to the point that our Minister of Health just a few weeks ago received research done on plant medicine, MDMA, that it's very beneficial for people with psychiatric disorders. So we are really getting into a different phase on plant medicine, which we used to qualify only as drugs and being bad. I think alcohol doing much more harm than consciously taking MDMA or truffles or mushrooms or other psychedelics.
Can you take me with you in the emotional and physical path that got you started with the plant medicine?
Well, I have been on this personal development path for many years, which started, I think, whenever I hit rock bottom, doing a lot of alcohol, drinking, eating just to feel alive, and alcohol and eating. That was my main distractions to not feel. So then I was around 23 and working hard, making a career, being very successful at a very young age. Oh, I forget one very important, and having sex with as many people as possible. So it was having sex with many people as possible, working very hard, trying to be successful, doing a lot of alcohol and eating too much, unhealthy, just not having to feel. Then I really hit rock bottom and decided that I needed to develop myself. So personal development then became a topic in my life, which was at the beginning really understanding, trying to understand my behavior, my choices, and approaching it from a very cognitive perspective. Then fast forward, that was very helpful. I still use these qualities in talking and listening to people. But fast forward, it was the moment that I embodied all this wisdom, like applied personal development, I consider it, is where the real shift happened. And on this path of really more embodiment, I also came across plant medicine. The first time I used it was macrodose. So that's a big, in a setting, a ceremonial setting with a shaman, very conscious, with two dear friends with whom I felt very safe. They guided the whole day in nature. This was one of the, like, I gave birth to my children, and this was another very impressive experience. That was the beginning of this, integrating this more also in my life. Although I don't think we actually need it, but it can be just a nice push to get things going a bit. Now I use it more in a micro setting. So just in a certain periods of time, just very small dosages.
What are you looking for in this plant medicine journey?
For me, it was very important to feel the calling. And that sounds very spiritual, but it has to do with, for me at least, I can only talk for myself, really get more into, like the path before was to get more intuitive. And through everything I've been doing, breath work and the personal development, all kinds of stuff, made me more able to listen to my inner voice, to the whispering of my body. There, suddenly, I just became aware that this plant medicine just crossed my path more and more often. Then suddenly I felt this longing, okay, it's not a longing, it was just very clear, oh, this is my next path. So this was on the way to it. I just had a very strong calling, knowing that I wanted to experience this, which made it a very, and I think it's difficult for me to find the English word, zuiver, pure. Yeah, a pure guidance. So then I decided, okay, with whom? And then, just started to listen to all the signs on my path. And I made a choice. I wanted to do with this shaman in an outdoor setting in nature, which was very beautifully in the dunes in north of Holland, and with two people I felt very safe with.
This is not another night in the city, drugs and alcohol. This is something you prepared for. You chose the shaman. You have the trustworthy people to be with you on this experience. What was this experience all about, and why the role of these people is so important?
The shaman is expert, and the other two men are colleagues of mine from the Wim Hof method. And we just had a deep, not just regular colleagues, we see each other. So I felt safe with them, and they had more experience just as participants themselves, applying it themselves. And then the setting was really finding our place in the dunes, in nature. It was beautiful weather. So had it been raining, it would have been canceled. So the setting was beautiful, outdoors. This is really a South American shaman with his instruments. We really made a beautiful circle. He had been preparing this cacahuasca for us to share and to drink. So there was a very beautiful setting in nature. And we took this, and I felt a bit anxious. Oh, what's gonna happen? But I felt very confident too, because I knew I wanted to do this. I wasn't scared. Then it was just so subtle, because I've been doing a lot of drugs in a more extreme way. I had drinking so much that I would pass out. So this was much more subtle and something that was much more familiar for my body. So it came up in a very subtle way, very gentle. And then it made me my senses got more pure, like hearing the zooming of the flies and hearing the walking of the ants. So all the senses got to the stage of very high intensity. Pure, just, I think more stronger senses. It was just like a very quick download of information, of memories, of the future, of the past, of the world on a whole, on my own life. It was just a very quick download of information, which I just had to follow and move with. We were sitting, and then we had a walk. Sometimes I just lay down and sink in, and I felt completely melted in the earth underneath. And other moments I just wanted to walk and observe and look around and have the sight into my eyes of everything around. The light became much more pure also. It took hours. I remember I had this beautiful insight, which I had never experienced before, of my middle name, my middle name is Helen, which means healing in English, in Dutch as well. Like my name is Kim Helen Podding. This moment I started writing in a little book, and I started writing Helen, 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 which means healing. Then I thought, it's strange that I write in Dutch. Usually I would write in English in these settings, because it was guided in English as well. But I started writing in Dutch, Helen. Then I read what I had written, and I realized, Helen, that's my name. That's my second name, my middle name. It felt like a very profound moment that I realized that my middle name had been missing for me. A lot of healing took place in this one day. And of course, it was a path to it and from it and since. But this was a very profound moment.
Is there something you wanted to heal from?
I didn't know in that moment. I realized that what I wanted to heal from was not something I didn't come with an intention, I want to heal from this. But what I realized in that moment is that I was able to feel really my body, my physical body. I had experiences like that before when I took my first ice bath, for instance. Before I went through life as a walking head, I always say. But there in that moment, I felt my whole, and especially the center of my body present. Instead of being hollow or feeling like there's something missing, I felt very present. Being able to connect to this feeling of presence, physical presence, has become my superpower. This superpower appears to be achievable for everybody.
In the course of the episode, we will talk about other superpowers you discovered and you're giving on to other people. It's realistic, nothing holistic, and nothing psychedelic. But my question, where have you been before the plant medicine experience and before discovering your superpowers? Where have you been as a woman, as a mother, and how did your career look like back then?
The biggest change had been like the birth of my children. That was the first big shift in career. Everything after was just very more subtle changes. Because then I realized I used to work in telecommunication, and I realized if I cannot be with my children, which were then still babies, I want to be and do something that's really valuable. For me, that was personal development of myself, but of course also of other people. I wanted to work in The Hague because I had been traveling through the country, but I had small children. I didn't want to waste any traveling time. So then I found a career in the municipality of The Hague, where I guided people who came from a vulnerable situation to integrate again into their daily life. I always see that people are good enough and want to help them and guide them so they can feel this on themselves as well. I want to give them perspective. That was the biggest skill I think I brought into the job. But this was always very much focused on, okay, then they have a job and a house, they're fixed. But we all know life only starts there. You're not fixed if you have a job and a house. So that made me get into more in-depth personal development. Not only on employability, coaching and guidance, that's very nice, it's very effective, but how do you maintain a job? How do you take care of yourself in this forever changing, constant changing world? So this has been a process through many years. Then going back to the 3 years ago when I did the plant medicine, that was after my dad had passed away for a year, and I had to take on a responsibility, or I wanted to take on a responsibility in his company, which I did for 1 year. But then I also decided this is just temporarily. I was looking again for, okay, so what do I want to develop for myself next? So this was one step in this development journey. When I became a mother, I think this was a very, very essential period of time. Before I had just been living, drinking, smoking, whatever, eating a lot. I was having a very unhealthy lifestyle, which, if you would look from the outside, it was pretty normal as well. But I did have a really bad addiction to food. Becoming a mother of 2 boys, but I also had the privilege to take care of my first child, who I always say I'm not her mother, but she's my first child. She was the child of my husband, and she's a girl. She's now 22. She just turned 22 yesterday. I realized I really hated my body. I really detested my body. When I paid attention to my body, it was to either feed it and overfeed it, or to judge it, to really look at myself in the mirror and really talk ugly to my body. And then I realized I'm living the example my children are seeing. So if I want to change, if I want to be a good mother, I have to change me. And I have to change my relationship with me. And because I even wanted from my husband to accept me with this judgment, self-judgment, but this was a very big challenge for him too, to have his wife feel so uncomfortable with her body. He once let me know that for him this was very challenging too, and I felt that was so selfish. It was eventually the biggest gift he could give me, because he woke me up. Then I realized, if I want to be a good mother, if I want to serve others, I really have to take care of me on a very essential level. And it is starting to accept me exactly the way I am. So then that was the first time that I went into group therapy on eating disorders. I had acknowledged this to myself in the past before, but I never really touched base to really get and give this a place in my life.
You finally give the eating disorder a place in your life. You go to group therapy, and then something went wrong. The therapy was not what you were looking for. What happened?
What one learns in therapy, at least what I experienced, was to really understand, to look at it from a cognitive perspective. What I missed was to really embody, to really feel my body, because this is what I longed for. What I had been doing up till that very moment was the only moments I felt my body was when I overate, because then I just felt so bloated and I just gained weight. This was my mechanism of how to feel my body. This was all explained, and very well explained. Even later on, I got the diagnosis of ADHD, and then medication is offered. But I kept longing for how to get self-coaching tools to self-regulate. I just couldn't find them in the regular therapy settings. While I did learn a lot. But it also challenged me to keep looking. And that is, I think, a privilege of whatever we think of ADHD, but you keep looking until you get this hyper focus. I kept looking on what can I do myself? Since I had never finished any education in my past because I was so distracted, I would be interested in something for 3 months, 6 months, and then I would go to the next subject. So I started an education on food and hormones, how to regulate your hormones with natural, like let food be thy medicine instead of medicine. I kept trying to find information in other sources. That brought me to get more into embodiment. I also walked this path of spirituality, and I would go to spiritual leaders, try to meditate and sit still. And one day said to this old man, I said, but then should I be sitting on a mountain and then I will be completely happy? He said, that would be such a waste of your talents, Kim. That was a really big message. I have to do it here. It's not in the future. It's not somewhere sitting on a mountain. I have to apply it in my life. That really motivated me to be more present and embodied in my daily life. It's not enlightenment that was the way. I realized it's embodiment that's the way. I have been going, as I said, I've been going through life as a walking head.
Can you describe practically what does that mean?
Completely disconnected to the rest of my body. And for me, it's so logical to say, and I bless you if you don't understand what I mean, but a lot of people do understand. I now notice a lot of people understand, I live inside my head so often, just mentally, and I feel disconnected. If I bring it down to our sensory system, it makes sense as well. Because if I would ask most people how many senses do we have, they would say 5, maybe 6. But 4 out of our 5 senses are in our head. Our sight, our sense, our tasting, our hearing, and our touch. Our sensory system is focused on the outside world, and most of the senses come in through our head. If we look outside. If we hear, we try to listen. What I realized is that I was missing the senses in the rest of my body. We are even taught, like when I got diagnosed with ADHD, it's better for you to take medication because then you can self-regulate and you don't feel that rushed. Then I realized maybe there is a more subtle way to feel. And I came across breath work and the cold. I was watching some videos with my oldest son. He was around 8. He came across Wim Hof, and Wim Hof is known as the Iceman. He's a Dutch guy. Now he's like worldwide famous. Back then he was just this kind of eccentric gentleman. And we started following him and taking cold showers. I hated the cold. Like even if I would go to the sauna, I would never go into the plunge after. But we started taking cold showers, and I went to this event. It was a festival, and they had this workshop. They gave a breathwork session in the dunes and then an ice bath on the festival. So I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. The most scary thing there was that I was standing in front of a group. There was like an audience because it was a festival. So there was an audience of 40. And I was standing there in my bikini. This was the most horrific thing I could ever imagine because I hated my body. I could not even look at myself, let alone have other people see me half naked. I was guided so well. I had to go last out of 20 people or something. She guided me into the bath. Stepping in, I felt the cold around my feet, around my legs. I laid down in the bath. I let myself sink into the ice water. Then I felt warm on the inside. It was not something I expected. I felt warm on the inside, physically warm. I felt strong and proud. I make it very romantic. So like in the ice bath, this is where everything changed. Of course, it was a whole path to it. But there was a very big moment. In the ice bath, I felt sincere pride and power on my body, on the inside of my body. Then I realized, okay, I don't think I have ever felt this. So this is interesting. Then I wanted to go to Wim. I visited him in a very big setting. And then I realized he offered travels to Poland. I decided, okay, I'm going to go there. I was always very difficult on spending money on myself, but this was very clear. I wanted to go to Poland. So I went to Poland. Before I had 2 weekends to become a Wim Hof instructor trainer. And in Poland, it was the final week. We had to climb a mountain wearing only shorts and a bikini top and shoes. In Poland, in wintertime, it can be somewhere between 5 degrees till minus 20. One can do this. It's just where do you put your attention? The day before we climbed the mountain, we were requested to share a story on the year that had passed before, what you had learned about the method, and integrate a personal story. So that brought me back to my first ice bath experience, being on this festival, standing in front of an audience in my bikini, which was the most terrifying thing I could imagine back then. I also was very afraid to speak in front of an audience. So here I had this little audience because I have to give my presentation. Then I realized, okay, I could do a really good presentation, prepare very well and do it very good. But then I realized, but that is, even that, although it feels uncomfortable, is within my comfort zone. If I want to practice what I've learned, then I really have to take it to a next step. And then I had to be really honest to myself. What is my most scary thing I could do right now? That would be standing in front of an audience without any clothes. That, like, standing in front of an audience is scary, but standing without my clothes on, that was next level. What made it very scary was to really show myself and not to give only the good version, because that is what I learned so long. Back then I was around 38, I think, 37. I always was what we now call greenwashing. I always looked at every experience from, but look at the bright side of this very shitty experience. Always look at the bright side, and never acknowledging the true discomfort. I felt so uncomfortable, the idea of really showing myself physically and not trying to put on my best clothes to make a good presentation, but to stand there again in front of my bikini. I didn't go bare naked, but I did decide to step in front of the group, prepare my story. And before I started, I said, the most scary thing for me is to stand in front of you showing my whole true self. So then I slowly started to undress myself in front of the group and continued my presentation standing in my bikini. When I started to undress, I knew I wanted to do this because I didn't want to hold back and I wanted to show me fully. But I remember also starting to really try to finish the finish line. I wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. I felt very rewarded after it. Like, I felt emotions and I felt pride again for the second time around in a way that is very rare. The day after, we had to climb the mountain. It was minus 20 degrees back then, and we wore shorts and a bikini top, which is different, by the way, if you are walking a mountain than standing in front of a group in the same clothes. But the day after was like a walk in the park. The whole mountain, minus 20, was easy because I had climbed my inner mountain the day before. I come from this totally hating my body and resenting myself into feeling slowly an integration of everything I had learned in therapy and understanding. I saw that they even had a training to become a Wim Hof instructor. And then I thought, okay, I'll apply. I was admitted. I went into this year program where I learned about breathing and cold exposure. This is the one superpower, I think, or tool people need to self-regulate better, especially the breath. The cold is it's like a mirror. It's very rewarding, instantly rewarding and long-term rewarding. But it's the breath that we have with us every day, every moment, during the night and during the day. And if you learn to regulate the breath and to recognize from the signals of the breath how you are doing, this is the one superpower that we need to embrace. My teenagers now are taught about gas exchange in school, but they are not taught how to apply the gas exchange. What does it mean for me? Like gas exchange is like this process. It's like this physical process, but the physical process, it's autonomic, but you can also do it consciously. How does it influence you then? When do you feel out of breath? When do you hold your breath?
Through ancient history, breathwork is proven to be an adapted practice. There is evidence of that. Most big evidence are women giving birth and using breath technique in other aspects of their lives from the beginning of time. I wonder, what's the impact and how breathwork differ in our lives in this modern time?
From ancient time, women are in a more natural way connected to the breath because they can sustain, like giving birth, which is the most intense physical process one can go through, I think, aside death. So yes, women are easily connected, but we are now in 2023. We are also very easily, male or female, disconnected to the breath. I even recently had a conversation. People know about sleep apnea, but there's also screen or tech apnea. We spend so much time on our screens, just stop breathing for a moment. And that is not very beneficial for our bodies. And this could result in less focus, being distracted, brain fog. If this will add up to for longer, this will disturb our hormones, or our hormones will disturb all other body systems, which can result in more depressed feelings and so on. When your breath is calmer, your nervous system is calmer. So our stress response system knows only two ways, which is active, fight and flight, or relaxed, rest and digest. It's called sympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic nervous system. Our breathing will help us to get more into the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, 2023, we are so often in sympathetic nervous system, being active, fight and flight, being there ready to perform the whole day through, even when you're sitting down behind your computer. There's less of a natural seesaw between the two of them. The breath can help us to get more into the parasympathetic. Just by an exercise for a few minutes will influence your autonomic breath instantly. And this goes for 98% of the people who do this. If you do a breathing exercise that works for you, it will beneficially regulate your unconscious breathing in a positive way.
How do you get ready and prepare yourself before you are leading individuals in their breathing sessions?
It all starts with getting connected to my truth in the moment. Every time when a session goes really well, it was because I was fully present with everything inside of me instead of trying to perform. And I know this wanting to perform attitude so well. This is how I got completely distracted from the rest of my body because I just had to do something really good, be successful in what I do, but lost the connection to my body. Now to really be a good space holder, as we say in our business. Space holding, I think, is the most important competence in guiding others. It's in the place of where I am fully present with everything that is inside of me and I'm completely available for the other person, whether it being one person or a whole group. Space holding will help if you have a group of people or one person who's holding space. It will give the other people in the room a sense of safety and trust that they maybe lack for themselves in that very moment because it's exciting to be going to the ice bath or going into the cold. You know, there's somebody in the room who's holding space and everything is good. You are good enough. You can bring in everything, whatever comes to heart. It starts with me tuning in with me. That's where it starts. That is also being gentle for yourself. I know all these skills and I know that I can apply them. I also know when I forget them. And sometimes life just does take over and things happen and you have a lot of responsibilities. For moments, I forget to use these skills and competences. But every time I become aware of it, I'm not connected to me. I train myself to go, I can come back again. You don't have to be perfectly connected to yourself the whole time, but training this skill will help you to be able to apply it when it's needed and acknowledge all the discomfort that could be there as well, giving people the opportunity to express their truth as well, especially when people are at the beginning of a trip of a week. They will feel uncomfortable because they are in a new group, which for some people can be very scary, having to connect to people and looking around. They all look so fit, and am I good enough? So this could be something. It could be because the whole experience with the cold could be very challenging, and anything in between.
I'm truly curious about the type of person that would be drawn to such an activity. Can you tell me about the group that you guided in Poland?
My last group, I wasn't aware. I entered the airport where I welcomed my group, and I just received the list. It appeared to be 19 men from all over the world between 19 and 53 years old. I didn't know that back then, but I found out later. So 19 men, and I think they were all extremely fit, half of them tattooed, a bald head, of course, bearded, very masculine appearing men. I used to be very much intimidated if I would having the responsibility to guide a group of men like this. They all looked like they are the perfect CrossFitter. Some were, like we even had a ninja in the group. I used to be very much intimidated. Now I wasn't, because I felt good enough for myself. What I learned when I started to get acquainted to this cold and this breath work, I saw a lot of, especially to the Wim Hof method, I saw a lot of people who were extremely fit and wanting to achieve the next kick. But I, as being a very feminine woman, felt very much attracted to this method as well. And having not the perfect body, I did feel like I belonged there as well. My mission was, back 7 years ago, to make it accessible for normal people. As I say, everybody, like not for everybody, because you do have to be willing to face your discomfort and to really have this sense of convincing this could be beneficial for you. If it's not, then choose something different. But if you feel attracted to the method, it doesn't matter what body type you have. It doesn't matter what challenges you have. I even had guided this young man who was paralyzed from the waist down after a motorcycle accident. And he too could do this. So it's for everybody, but not for everybody.
Can you talk more about what was the state of mind and soul for both yourself and your group during the session in Poland?
I felt comfortable. I felt at place. And I realized I don't have to have all the answers. I did feel a very strong calling. What I was there to bring was my femininity. And having this whole male group, in the past, I would have adjusted to their masculine energy. I have a lot of masculine energy in myself as well. But they actually motivated me to be my masculine and feminine side integrated. They even were interested in hearing my feminine approach. Yes, they thought they were going to come there to climb that mountain, to be really cool and to have really amazing Instagram pictures. But what they found is to climb their inner mountain, which was much more subtle, was all about going within. And suddenly the whole Instagram pictures were not important anymore because they found the silence within. At the last day, I remember that we did a lot of cold exposures and we did a lot of breath work. Breath work is amazing to get you in altered state. So every morning we started in this breath work, getting people in altered state. And altered state is usually when you fall in love or when you're on drugs or on alcohol, then you feel an altered state and suddenly all the wisdom of the world comes together inside of you. You can also get there, your inner wisdom, with your breath. That is not cool, and this is not nice Instagram pictures because you are there in bliss laying down on a mat. So we started with breathwork every day and cold exposures a lot. On the last day, we did a cold exposure. We went into the waterfall and the men were in there for a certain time. I will never say how long. They got out and they started to warm themselves from the inside. It's a very important follow through. It's not the cold exposure that is the only thing. It's the cold exposure and following through by warming yourself from the inside. And this requires very much mental presence, being really completely present and using your body to warm yourself from the inside. This doesn't go with taking cool Instagram pictures because then you'll be distracted. On the 5th day, I saw this group of men getting out of the water, feeling very excited, but using this joy and this excitement to be really silent as well. I thought that was the most beautiful thing I could watch. To have this group of men who appeared to be very extrovert and really cool, high on their energy, they suddenly used this energy to be very silent and connected on a completely different level without words. There was such a strong connection with this group of men, which a colleague of mine, a female colleague, and I had the privilege to guide them for a whole week. It was the most beautiful and hopeful thing to watch, to see men from all over the world between 19 and 53 finding the silence and the soft power within without having to show off. And I love that.
Kim, can you please persuade me that breath work and cold exposure are not simply temporary trends?
I don't think it's a trend. I think it started as a trend. A lot of breathwork starts as a trend. Putting Instagram pictures on you in an ice bath or in natural water looks like a trend. But marketing-wise, I say sell them what they want and give them what they need. It's good that it's a trend because then we will reach a lot of people. But I think we are going through an evolution. We seeked development outside of ourselves. Like Wim always has this beautiful example. We created things to go to the moon, but we forgot to find ways to go within. Although it looks really cool to be in the ice bath, it all has to do with finding your way within. If you learn how to adjust your body and your mind to make your body and mind more flexible to the constantly changes of the world, this is how we will evolve. And my oldest son brought me on the path of Wim Hof, who is not my guru. I want to say that, but he's an inspiration like many others.
After finding embodiment and nurturing your personal development, how do you approach your everyday life?
When I started to get more into this, my children, now becoming teenagers, are completely not interested in that, of course. I just live my truth, and I trust that my children and the people around me will pick from it whenever and whatever is suitable for them. I also am mostly inspired by them because I think they are much easier adapted to, for instance, the whole tech world. As long as my children are not interested, I'm not forcing anything on them, but I do trust that when the time comes to it, they will knock on my door and say, "Mom, hey." Then they might be interested in what I have to say. Until that time, very subtle. I will not try to fix their circumstances because I cannot. I could go to the teacher and try to fix things, but I'd rather give them tools how to fix it themselves. And there are also, I will always integrate not only competences from a cognitive perspective, but also Okay, but how do you feel? How will you stand if you approach this teacher to say what you want, and to really make sure they embody all the knowledge they learn in school, instead of only being able to write an exam, but to feel how does my body feel when I get into this difficult situation. That is something that my parents were not able, bless them, but they were not able because they were not taught. And I feel very much privileged that I learned to connect to my body, which I was only able to learn because I was so disconnected, and that I can now hand this over to my children.
Kim's vibrant and positive energy really brought a lively atmosphere to our recording session. It got me super excited to try a complete breath work that might, for me, also end up with an ice bath. It might seem like a just fun thing to do. According to Kim, the real value lies in the journey itself. Breath work is like a superpower that helps us navigate through our inner world. I will try it with Kim at Nice World, and that is n-ice.world. You will find it in the show notes. Before we go to my usual podcast conclusion, I want to share the guided breathwork session that Kim took me through in the beginning of this episode. It's a special treat for you to enjoy. And please, don't forget to listen to my catchy jingle at the end and spread the word about the podcast. After all, sharing is caring.
When I guide people into breathing exercises, I always start, do you have any idea how often we breathe during the day? And most people don't. And if the answers differ between 6 times per minute till 22 times per minute, and all are right, because it depends on what we do. But it doesn't make any sense how often do I breathe or my neighbor breathes. It all depends on how do you breathe. The breath, it's the first thing we do when we get born. It's the last thing we do. We exhale when we die. And in between, there's hardly any consciousness. And in the health, well-being industry, has been a lot of attention for a healthy food, healthy movement, and sleep now since a few years as well. And the breath is quite new. While the breath influences how we move, how we eat, and how we sleep as well. So for me, everything starts with breathing. And maybe breathing is not the answer to everything, but at least let's begin with breathing. So I would like to guide you in a short exercise where we first count the numbers of breath you will inhale during 1 minute. I'll first explain it to you and then I'll guide you live. So for the first minute, we will count the numbers of breath. We will do so in complete silence for 1 minute. You will count without trying to change anything. You will just count the numbers of breath. Then I will guide you through box breathing. This is a breathing exercise, which is used by special forces. I've trained Navy SEALs and people from Dutch special forces, and they say we use this method because it will help us relax and focus. And for a long time, breath work has been this spiritual yogi kind of thing, but like special forces, they don't use nice because it makes you feel so good. They only use effective methods. So box breathing comes down to breathing in for 4, not breathing for 4, exhaling for 4, not breathing for 4. So you will get into a square, a box. 4 in, 4 not, 4 out, 4 not. And we will repeat that for a few rounds. And then after that, we will finish off with counting the numbers of breath that will go unconsciously, autonomically after an exercise. And we'll see how it will influence your breath. So I request you to sit up in a slightly active yet relaxed way. With your crown to the ceiling, your shoulders relaxed. And before you relax your shoulders, you take your shoulders to your ears so you can then drop them down. Let them go. And you feel the air. You become aware of the air moving outside your body, inside your body. This is the reason why we breathe. We breathe because of gas exchange. You become aware on where does the breath, the air enter your body. Does it go through the nose or through the mouth? And without changing a thing, just observe how you breathe in this very moment. Just follow the breath as it goes, naturally. And then when I give you a sign, you will start to count the numbers of in-breaths you will take during 1 minute. So every time you feel the air entering your body, you count this as 1. You don't have to change, just observe your natural breath in this very moment. You may start counting in complete silence for 1 minute the numbers of in-breaths you take from now. Keep breathing, stop counting. Keep your gaze inwards. You've counted a number. Don't try to judge it, don't try to qualify it. Remember the number and then let go. You become aware of, again, where does the air enter your body? The air which is filled here on sea level with 21% of oxygen, entering your body through your nose or through your mouth. And then we'll start an exercise box breathing. And I'll repeat once before we start. We will count in for 4. We will not breathe for 4. We will exhale for 4 and then not breathe for 4. So before we start, we take a recovery breath, meaning inhale, exhale, inhale, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, exhale, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. Repeat 2 times, 2 rounds on your own. And after your last round, you transform again to your unconscious breathing. The breath that just comes and goes in a natural way without you interfering. You return to your unconscious breathing. You become aware, just following every next in-breath. Become aware of the next inhalation. And every next time you inhale, you count as one. And we will count this again in 1 minute, the numbers of in-breath as of now. Stop counting, keep breathing. Keep your gaze closed. A second number. No need to compare. Just inhale the number and let go. And you may rub your hands to each other to warm them. Put them on your face and massage your face for a moment. Massage your eyes, the space between your eyes, your ears in front and in the back, your cheeks. To start massaging your physical head, the place where we spend so much time thinking, overthinking, planning. And now it's time to give a little physical attention to your head. Massage it, caress it, whatever is needed for you at this moment. And then you let your hands drop to your chest. Your left lung, your right lung. Put your hands on each side. Relax your face. And while you're at it, relax your face for the rest of your life. And when you relax your body, relax your whole life, just for this moment. You inhale and feel movement under your hands, feeling movement in your chest area. And you sigh it out. You inhale and release. You inhale, and on your exhalation, let go of all the tension in your body. Then move your hands to your stomach, putting them on your belly button. And now when you inhale, observe if there's any movement in your belly. When you exhale, it'll sink in. And then when you inhale, feel movement in your belly. And you exhale, release. And let your arms rest in your lap. And then blink your eyes open for a moment, close them again. And open and get used to the light, having the light enter your eyes again. And just for a moment, you connect it to your breath. And maybe for when you do your next task of the day, invite yourself to stay connected to the breath. So adjust your task to the tempo of your breath, instead of your breath adjusting you to the whole long to-do list you have to do. And when you're ready, open your eyes and you're awake.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends and family and ask them to subscribe. Leaving a rating and review on platforms like Apple Podcast can also help boost the podcast's ranking. Your support through word of mouth is greatly appreciated. If you feel I'm encouraging you to tell your story, contact me on rula@thelifeaffairspodcast.com. You will see my email in the show notes. I'll see you next time.